Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the town of Lincoln for a regional budget pre-consultation or budget consultation meeting. This is the first of two budget consultation meetings that is being held by the Niagara region this evening. I'm Councillor Dave Augustine, Mayor of the town of Pelham and Chair of the Budget Review Committee, and it is my pleasure to be with you this evening and chairing this event. I want to thank you, each of you here this evening who's come in through the wet weather to be with us, and also thank those who are maybe watching as we live stream this event. We look forward to a very productive meeting, a question and answer session meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce some members of Regional Council who have joined us here this evening. The first is Regional Chair Gary Burrows. Thank you for joining us. We also have members of Regional Council who are here in the audience watching, and no doubt there's some at home. Those watching this evening include Councillor Mark Bilesma, who is here, Mayor Bill Hodgson, and Councillor Henry D'Angela. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'd also like senior staff who are with us around this horseshoe to each introduce themselves and give us their position. And these will be the staff that will be answering questions as we proceed through this evening's event. So if we could start with Dr. Yeager.
I'm Dr. Valerie Yeager, and I am Medical Officer of Health and Commissioner of Public Health.
I'm Patrick Robson, Commissioner of Integrated Community Planning.
Ken Brothers, Commissioner of Public Works.
Hi, I'm Brian Hutchings. I'm the Commissioner of Corporate Services and the Treasurer.
And I'm Deputy Chief Joe Matthews of Regional Police.
Good evening. I'm Tony DeMario, the CAO, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority.
Good evening. Alan Tykerobe, Acting CEO with the Niagara Economic Development Corporation.
I'm Laura Beckwith, General Manager for Niagara Regional Housing.
Hello, I'm Catherine Chislick, Commissioner of Community Services.
Thank you very much for introducing yourselves this evening. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't also thank Mayor Bill Hodgson and the town of Lincoln for hosting us this evening. We appreciate you opening up this facility to us so that we could have this public engagement session, so thank you very much. I'd like to go through the agenda for this evening, and then we'll proceed with the agenda. We often do that in municipal governance, so this will be no different. The agenda is that I will first, as soon as I'm done speaking, ask our regional chair to give us some comments about the 2012 budget and bring greetings on behalf of Regional Council. Then I will talk about the budget process, how we got here, and the way that we're going, the movement forward, and that agenda for that, and also a little bit about. Then we will have our Commissioner, Brian Hutchings, the Treasurer, talk about the budget and provide some context for the 2012 budget. Then we'll open the floor to delegations, and I do have two listed delegations. A delegation is somebody that wants to make a specific presentation. They'll do so from the area here. They'll have 10 minutes. It says in my notes that I will keep you strict to that 10 minutes. But they will also provide a time for questions and answer period if required. So I do have two for that. And then we'll also then open the floor to questions, both from the audience members here and also those online who are hopefully watching this live web streaming. So that should take us to about a 2-hour process that we're here this evening for. There will also be time for those that are here to ask staff any questions that they have that may come to them. But there might also be people here present that don't want to make a delegation, that want to write down a question. So there will be a staff person coming in here handing me questions either from our social media website or also from members of the audience. So sometimes people don't necessarily want to have that microphone thrust in their face and ask a question. They can do so through me. And finally, two final things. I think the first is that we would like these questions and the dialogue to really be geared to the 2012 budget, to the budget that we're discussing. That's why we're providing context through this process, and that's what regional councillors are here to listen to our public members about that budget, how we can improve that budget and make it better. The second thing is about decorum. I think we always have to say this at public meetings, that one of the key things that makes a public meeting work is when we respect each other. We respect the time. We also respect each other through the process. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Our goal is to ensure that everyone has a better understanding about the regional budget and has an opportunity to participate in that budget, either through this process this evening or through their regional counselor or other ways directly with some of the staff that we've made available to do that. And everyone's key to do that and encourage you to be part of the budget process. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our regional chair, Gary Burrows. Chair Burrows.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And it is a pleasure to be here in Lincoln this evening. And I do want to thank, on behalf of, certainly as the chair has done, thank Lincoln for this event tonight. This is the first of two public presentations. The next is next Wednesday, where we're actually web streaming the budget process. It has been requested by the public that we listen, that we understand the concerns of the residents. This is the opportunity, both at home and here in the audience, to bring your concerns and your questions forward about the budget for 2012. So we are wanting to listen, and I thank the regional councillors that are here listening this evening to hear those issues. In February, we hosted a 2011 Budget Community Forum in Niagara Falls. That was regarding the 2011 budget. It was very successful. We got very good feedback, and hopefully as social media continues to grow so quickly that there will be more involvement, there will be more questions. We need to connect with the audience, and I'm looking forward to that. In 2011, the Niagara region administered an operating budget of $586 million for the levy side, of which approximately $283 million came from you, the property taxpayers. The remaining $304 million came from other sources, including the Government of Ontario and payments for services by users of those services. The 2012 proposed operating budget for rate and levy is $781 million, of which approximately $297 million comes from your property tax base. We are recommending a 1.3% affordability increase, or $17, on current operations, with a 2.9% increase for sustainability. This includes intermunicipal transit, interim police facilities, the capital gap finance strategy, and reserves funding. The total proposed increase per household is 4.2%, or approximately $55. The remaining $484 million comes from other funding sources. Regional Council is also responsible for approving funding for the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and Niagara Regional Police Service. They also approve budgets for Niagara Regional Housing and Niagara Economic Development Corporation. All representatives are here tonight to hear comments and questions about those issues. Many of the programs and services provided by the region and its agencies are funded not only from your property tax dollars, but also from other levels of government, particularly the province of Ontario. Many of these programs and services are mandated by the province, and we are legislatively obligated to deliver them. The average homeowner in Niagara with a house worth $220,000 pays approximately $1,534 in regional taxes annually. These are big numbers. We must ensure our budget is both affordable and sustainable for our Niagara taxpayers. We commend regional staff and the Chief Administrative Officer, Mike Trojan, for their commitment to affordability and enhancing transparency and public consultation in the budget process. I personally am certainly looking forward to the questions and comments at tonight's meeting. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate those comments. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to allow each of us, and especially members of the public, to better understand the region's proposed budgets and to ask questions about those budgets as it relates to the programs and services that we offer. For tonight's presentation, as has been indicated, we're going to be focusing on the 2012 budget and how it compares to the 2011 budget, and predominantly to the what I call the pocketbook expenses, what you paid in your property taxes in 2011 versus 2012, and we'll have some numbers on that very shortly. We've already heard that this is one of two meetings. I would ask this, there it is, the slide. This is about the budget process. So all of our Budget Review Committee meetings are open to the public, and they're public meetings, opportunities, and there's always opportunities for members of the public to provide comments on our draft budget. As you can see from the timetable, we've already had several of these meetings. They started back in June with some budget guidance, and they were reignited again in September with methodologies regarding rates. So what does that mean? That talks about what are the principles behind which we would establish rates for water, wastewater, and waste. Then we've talked about the operating and capital budgets and the budgets to actual. Then the levy operating budget presentations. Levy operating budget is what effect is that to your pocketbook, and that's what we call the levy. Most recently, we've had one on the rate presentations. The rate is, again, water and wastewater and waste management. And we also heard from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority about their budget. In the green is where we are this evening. Or I'm sorry, it isn't. That was last Monday about water and waste management budgets and operations, and I heard it was a well-received meeting on Monday. The second green is where we are tonight, talking about the draft operating and capital budgets and the public engagement sessions. We have another session next week. Also next week, we'll be looking to the capital budget. So we've already heard about the capital budget. Now we're hoping to approve it in committee, which will then be ratified by regional council following that. And also looking at the operating updates and operating budgets of the Niagara Regional Police Services and the Economic Development Office. November 10th, we'll be looking at those rate budgets again, water, wastewater, waste management. December 1st, the operating budget, and looking at the user fee bylaw for approval if required. So we also have, sorry, the if required is if we need another meeting, as if that's not enough. There's lots of meetings there, lots of debate, lots of information that Regional Council will go through to arrive at our 2012 budget. And I think most importantly, we want to hear from the public, and that's why we're here this evening. So I look forward to hearing the comments and questions from members of the public here and live streaming. And before we do that, as promised, we will have a budget overview from our Commissioner of Corporate Services and Treasurer, Mr. Brian Hutchings. Commissioner Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Burrows. I think I'm going to leave it on this slide for 1 second, and I'm not going to go through the process. The Chair did a very good job presenting that. But I think when you total up the hours and looking at the hours that the regional councils are putting into this budget, these hours alone on this isn't preparation time or not. This is actually hours of sitting, listening, debating. It's 43 hours. It's a week's worth of work plus some overtime putting in since June 9th. So, and if December 8th is a lot, it'd be 40. It's almost 50 hours of work in budget preparation. I think that's a key figure to look at. There's many hours trying to approve 3 budgets: a capital budget, a levy budget, which is basically your operating budget, as well as a rate budget, as the Chair has explained, and I'll explain in 1 minute. But I think that's significant. So looking at Niagara Region's proposed budgets, as the Chair mentioned, this is a chance to better understand regional taxes, also known as the levy, and Region's annual budgeting process, to listen to your comments and receive feedback tonight. How the budget works, there's really 2 components, and I'm going to add a third component. to this. It's the operating budgets, which is we flip back and forth to your taxes or to your levy. Those are synonymous, those three. If I flip in and out of that, that's what I'm talking about is our operating budget. And that really pays for your daily business of the Niagara regions, its boards, its agencies, the programs and services, which I'll highlight, and as well as including the staff to deliver those services and supplies. It's something like, operating budget, and then it's something equivalent to running your car. It's really paying for your gas. Buying the car is the capital budgets, and I'll talk about the capital budget. It's things such as buying things that have a useful life of more than a year, assets such as roads, water treatment plants, sewer, buildings, machinery, equipment. Those sorts of things are included in our capital budgets. I think to look at the scope of the Niagara region, and many people don't realize the scope of the Niagara region and wonder, I mean, we're, as the chair said, Chair Burrows said, we're about, all told, we're a $780 million organization. This is equivalent to the same size as Leon's Furniture or Indigo Music and Books, and our budget is almost twice the size of the province of PEI. I think key to looking at our budget, and the region brought in 1987, an affordability strategy, trying to keep taxes below the current growth rates of properties in the Niagara region, plus people's CPI, the level of growth. Looking at that, when we presented in June, we thought the level of growth of incomes was 2 to 3.8% we're receiving from the Conference Board of Canada, plus our growth rate was 1%. We felt as staff the affordability could be between 3 to 4.8%. Council sent us away, Regional Council sent us away with a guide of 1.9%. And you'll see today we've met that guide, but I also think it's important, and many of the councilors have spoken this for a number of years, that it's not just about affordability, it's also about sustainability. Anybody knows owns a house, if you don't put money in the house to keep maintaining that house and make sure it can sustain, that house won't stand long. So you also need to make sure you're investing money properly so it is sustainable down the road. So we also, the definition of that is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet our own needs. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute when I talk about sustainability. So looking at the property tax in the Niagara region, and the Chair Burrows mentioned this, the average person in the Niagara region pays almost $1,540 in property taxes. It's roughly 49% on average across the Niagara region. That changes from municipality to municipality, but roughly 49%. Last year we presented this, it was 50%, so it has gone down a little bit in proportion. You can see on average, the local tiers account for about 34%, and education taxes are about 17%. Looking at the last 10 years of property taxes since 2003, or actually about 9 years, I'm sorry, of property taxes, we've seen a high of 5.8% in 2003 to a low of negative 1.37% last year. This graph also has some dots on it. Those dots, for many of you who've been following regional politics or local politics, include uploading dollars. The province took back a number of services such as Ontario Disability Support Program, and they took those costs back. So we wanted to make sure we're transparent and showed what our budget would have been if we wouldn't receive those uploading dollars. It's on average about, over the last 5 years, about 1.5% our budget would have been approved on average across those times. With those uploading dollars in, you can see it's equivalent to a 0.25% annual tax increase over the last 5 years. So really the bars are what was approved, but if we didn't receive that benefit from the province, and we thank our provincial partners, we would have saw a higher increase in taxes year to year. The next slide just puts it in, for me as an accountant, some people like to see things visually. I like to see things in numbers. Really, it's the same numbers that you just saw in your previous slide, but over the course of the last 10 years. Comparatively speaking, looking at ourselves to other regions and other cities across which are comparators, there's 6 other regions. There's 6 regions in the Niagara. 6 regions in the province, and looking at them plus two cities such as Ottawa, Hamilton, and London. The high of 18.8% over the last 5 years in the Durham region to the low of 1.25% in the Niagara region. So I think our staff and as well as our council has taken the affordability strategy quite seriously, has recognized the economic situation in the Niagara region and tried to keep property taxes as low as possible and those increases as low as possible. Looking at this year's budgets, as I mentioned earlier, Council sent us away with a 1.9% affordability target. Without growth, it was about 2.9%. We're estimating growth in the Niagara region this year to be 1%. You can see we, after staff took the budget away since June and worked the summer on it, we came back with a budget increase of 2.3% with a growth rate of 1%, which basically after that it's about a 1.3% increase in levy or operating budgets, which is about $17.06 on your local property taxes. I mentioned earlier about sustainability. We're looking at various programs in the Niagara region that weren't included in the budget. They were taken out of reserves. They were being taken out of reserves and not funded really out of our property taxes. I'm going to highlight those in a second, but if council, and it's council's discretion, they can approve these decisions or not. But it would add about another 2.6% onto the operating budget or the levy. And there's some new programs I'll highlight on the next slide, $550,000, which is 0.2%. And if all these were in total, the total budget would go up by 4.2% or $54.42 on an average home of $219,732. Just to highlight what those sustainability decisions are, Public Works Intermunicipal Transit was launched a couple months ago. That has been funded out of reserve fund, which the contingency reserve fund will be dried up in a couple of years if we continue drawing from it without reinvesting back into that reserve. That's one of the sustainability decisions that we really should have put this on a property tax levy, which wasn't there, as well as the Niagara Regional Police Services. At this point in time, they're in a interim arrangement. They're moving their headquarters to Niagara Falls. They're redeveloping Division 1 and Division 2, or Detachment 1 and Detachment 2, St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. That's is a interim funding arrangement for 3 years. That's a 0.7% on the increase, as well as we're saying we can offset that with we received some one-time money from the province of $5.2 million. We're saying use 1/3 of that a year to match up against the police, so it kind of nets it out as close as we can. Some of the other things, and this I'll get into this when I talk about capital, but general governments, we're considering a capital levy increase. Many times, and it's been in the paper on numerous occasions, that there's a large gap between what we need to do engineering-wise and capital infrastructure-wise and what we can actually finance. That gap has ranged from $415 to a low of $101 million if we do this investment strategy. And what we're suggesting as staff to council, it's a financing strategy to try to decrease the gap. And if we do this, increase the levy by 1% per year for 5 years, we can decrease our capital gap to $101 million, which 2 years ago reported was $400 million. We're also suggesting, because of these draws in the contingency reserve of the last years, we need to reinvest in it again, which this contingency reserve does anything from insurance to roads, winter allowance, what have you. It's basically an organization of $720 million. There's about $6 million in that accounts, and it's basically as our savings account in case of a rainy day. We're considering 3 new programs, mainly in the ICP area. $550,000 includes the Gateway Economic Zone financing, as well as waterfront strategy and a Smarter Niagara incentive increase to the budget. So those are the 2.9% increase that I mentioned earlier, 2.8%, I'm sorry, and that's basically further description of those numbers. As the chairman mentioned, the total gross budget of the Niagara region, all told, the value of service we provide is $781 million, or $750 million. When we add in capital, we spend as well another $150 million. We're a $920 million organization. The revenues received, we're very thankful for the revenues received. They're in cost-sharing programs such as in public health, community services, and in social housing, and a number of capital projects that we receive we're very thankful for. And those total about $344 million. So on our levy side, on the tax side, it's about $289 million we levy out to the local communities. But on our rate side, and I want to explain rates for 1 second, that includes our water, our wastewater, and our waste management, your garbage collection. That's cost of that is about $139 million. So overall, the local Niagara residents would pay is $436 million for all the services provided. And I'll highlight those services in a minute. Our capital budget I've mentioned a couple times. This is a high-level view of our capital budgets, anywhere from information technology systems, properties management, down to our water, wastewater treatment plants that we need to invest in, make sure we have adequate and safe drinking water in the Niagara region, to our investment in local affordable housing, and investments in our nursing homes and our ambulances we operate at the Niagara region. We now have highlighted, being an accountant, you also don't want to say how you're going to spend the money. You also want to make sure we have the proper financing in place, and we do have matching financing right now in place to fund that capital program. For the last 10 years, our capital program has averaged about $136 million, so we're in that same ballpark this year with some escalator factors over the last 10 years. But you can see the asterisk. The capital financing program includes the sustainability money I mentioned earlier of $2.9 million included in there. That balances it out, but the council will have to make that decision if that'll be included or not. So where do your taxpayer dollars go? I'll show this slide twice, once the beginning, once the end, and we'll go through each one of the services we're providing. But you can see the various programs and services broken down on average, like it's based on a $219,000 home. This is on average throughout the communities. These numbers, I'm going to say, have a bit of a variance community to community, but that's on a $219,000 home. The regional taxes are $1,373, and when you add in the garbage collection of $167 on average, or $322 per week, the total regional taxes are $1,541. And I just want to double asterisk there. The police budget is at guidance as we've, as council's directed, but the police budget will be presented to their board tomorrow, and it'll be presented next week at Niagara Regional Council Committee of the Whole. So community service, the first item I'd like to highlight. Community services provides services for seniors in the Niagara region through 8 nursing homes, 1,500 seniors and various seniors community programs. There's children's services programs for 15,000 children. This includes child cares, resource centers, and various other programs for children in our Niagara region. Our social assistance and employment opportunities, also known as Ontario Works or Welfare, provides services for 35,000 people in the Niagara region, which includes the disability support program, as well as our shelter for homeless populations and services north of 9,000 people. In the Lincoln area, for those from Lincoln, this includes programs such as Deer Park Villa, or our seniors area, as well as various child care centers, including YMCA programs, as well as Beansville Cooperative Nursery. And in the Lincoln area, there's about 134 cases of social assistance in the Lincoln area. You see the cost of those services, senior services, it's about $4.6 million. That cost has gone down by about 9 cents since last year, what a person would pay on average. Children's services, about $28.55, the average taxpayer. And social assistance, or Ontario Works, about $115 per person. And our emergency shelters for homeless people are at $245. So total for community service, about $168.02, down a little bit from last year by about 45 cents. Our public health programs, you see the various programs they offer, communicated disease control, immunization, sexual health, dental health, environmental health, chronic disease and injury prevention, health promotion information, family health, and emergency medical services, i.e. ambulances and paramedics, which respond to 72,000 calls per year. Those programs to the general public, all those programs I rhymed off on the earlier slide, the previous slide, not including our EMS services. Total budgets received is $36.3 million. There's roughly, in some programs, are 100% funded. Some are most of them are 75-25 funded by the province of Ontario. The net effect to the Niagara regional taxpayer is $6.9 million, which equates to about $31.88 per person, about 5 cents more this year than last. The EMS services, I mentioned all the calls in the previous slide. Again, this is cost share with the province of Ontario, and it's $36.6 million budgets total. The net cost of the Niagara Region taxpayer is $16.1 million, or $74.33, 6 cents less than last year. So you can see this total public health numbers are almost equivalent to last year's numbers. Integrated community planning. This is our team that does work on climate action, culture planning, healthy communities, sustainable Niagara initiatives, as well as supporting effective council committee process. Our clerk's office is run through here, as well as our communications team, and does a number of work in the local community. I think the highlight just recently was the Niagara's designated the Cultural Capital of Canada. A lot of work from this team to get that designation with our local community partners. You can see that the budget there is approximately $7 million. The net effect is $6.2 million, or $28.84, about 5 cents more than last year. This doesn't include the new programs. The new programs that were highlighted include the Gateway Economic Zone, Waterfront Enhancement Strategy, and Smarter Niagara incentives. Would add another $2.54 to that budget on average per person. Leadership and governance. This is the area of the CAO's office, the Niagara region, as well as the regional chair and the members of council. Approximately $2.3 million budget. There is no revenues or cost sharing in this budget. It's about $10.70, about 23 cents less than last year. Seen a reduction in that. Corporate services. This is my department that I manage. It includes financial management and planning, legal services, human resources, facilities management, IT solutions. The net budget is about $13.2 million, or $61 to support all the departments we're talking about, including Public Works, ICP, Public Health, Community Services, and our various boards and agencies. Some of the general government expenditures and revenues. This is kind of expenditures and revenues that are, I'm going to say expenditures that are a little bit not in control of one budget. It includes our debt charges of $30 million per year. Things such as emergency phone services, 911, which we contract out to the police services. Things such as our contingency reserve for any emergencies, $600,000, as well as looking at our responsive region team we're putting in place at the Niagara region to try to find efficiencies that this new council has suggested and bringing in place, as well as our capital financing out of a current levy about almost $9 million. And MPAC, a lot of people don't realize the impact costs borne by the Niagara region to a tune of almost $6 million. MPAC is a municipal property assessment corporation for taxpayers. This is, you get your assessment of your home, and everything is based on that assessment. So what your value is, which when we talk about levy, that's a levy, that's a number, which is a multiplier number, factors into your assessment. You times it by your assessment, and that's how you come up with your property taxes. So impact is really one of the major numbers and what figures into your property tax number, your calculation or methodology. And last but not least, and these are some of the highlights, on the revenue side, our revenues include various revenues, and which aren't strictly related to a department, but we have investment income in the Niagara region of almost $11 million, over $11 million. Public Works, probably the most well-recognized of our departments in the Niagara region, includes our transportation development services, our water treatment, our water plants, as well as our waste collections. Just on the levy side, not the rate side, this is the levy side, which is for the property taxpayers. You can see this team maintains over 750 kilometers of roads in the Niagara region, 179 bridges, 295 traffic signals, and also includes snow removal services. Our development team in the Public Works area does over 550 development applications annually and improves an inspection of 370 private sewage systems annually. You can see in this budget, transportation area, which has an asterisk, it excludes any sustainability items, budget of almost $23 million net to the Niagara taxpayer, or approximately $108.88 per person. Our development services have stayed consistent at $0.8 million net and $3.69 per resident on their property taxes. We spent some time in Commissioner Brothers' my peer at Monday nights explained to the public engagement session on Monday nights the various things regarding water, wastewater, and our billing systems and our whole systems of quality and inspection for our water systems and wastes in the Niagara region. You can see we manage 14 landfill sites, as well as recyclables, organics, and garbage collection. We treat and deliver 59 billion liters of water per year, treated at 6 plants and transmitted throughout 53 facilities and 307 kilometers of water mains. Wastewater treats about 79 billion liters of water. Yes, that's not a typo. We actually treat more water coming in off wastewater than we actually do deliver, for a number of various technical reasons, which I'm sure Commissioner Brothers can explain if he's asked. I know the answer, but he does a better job explaining it than I do. But I have heard it a few times. I can probably get away with it, Ken, but you do a better job than I do. We treat these at 11 plants, and we're collected through 123 pump stations. You can see our waste management has a budget of $34 million, an average cost of $168, and we're looking at a decrease. Ken's team has done some private sector, private entrepreneurship through some contracts with 2 other communities, and it's brought the cost down, as well as the recycling area has increased in revenues. Our water wastewater area, it's approximately $105 million budget, very capital intensive area for capital builds, and an average cost of $423 per resident household, which would roughly be about $14 with those 2 totaled in. Our friends at our agency boards and commissions, this includes the Niagara Regional Police Services. For those in the general public, each one of these organizations has a separate board. They report to a separate board, but they work in collaboration with the Niagara region through our levy system, so we have the Niagara Regional Police Services, the Provincial Offences Court Administration. Many people don't realize that is run through the Niagara region, so any tickets that you receive are run through the Niagara region, and it's cost shared. The revenues are cost shared on a 50-50 basis with the local area municipalities, your local city or township. The other agency is Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, Niagara Regional Housing, and Niagara Economic Development Corporation. We look at those. See the police, and again, this is an asterisk beside it. It has not been approved by the police board yet. It will be presented next week at the council. It's a budget review committee on November 3rd, but looking at $124.9 million or $576 on your property taxes. The provincial offences courts, as I mentioned earlier, they're the ones that collect the monies from the tickets. They have no connection to the police. They're run separately, but you can see they're a money maker for the Niagara region. They actually, it's a net, which revenue for the taxpayers of $4.62. Again, you see a double fold to your property taxes because some monies also go to the local municipalities as well. So that's just the region's portion. The Conservation Authority, again, they're a separate agency, but their amounts to the regional taxpayers about $30.28. Niagara Regional Housing provides about, I think it's 7,600 or close to 8,000 supportive housing units in the Niagara region to individuals, and it's about $122.75, the cost of the regional taxpayer. And last but certainly not least is our Economic Development Corporation at $1.9 million, which is the share that the Niagara region provides a grant for, or $8.99 per Niagara regional taxpayer. So in closing, Mr. Chair, there's a summary of all the slides I went through. It's quite a bit. Each one of these services have many, many more features than I could possibly highlight in the time allotted to me. But there's the numbers that this totals to: $1,373 of the regional levy plus the garbage collection, $1,541, and a house assessed at $219,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hutchings. Appreciate that presentation, and helps us form the basis of the budget that we're talking about this evening. I noticed that members of the public here have that and are looking through it, so they do have that handout available if you don't have one. And also, I'm told that it's available on the region's website for download if you're interested in that. Well, the next section of our meeting is really when we hear from members of the public. It's the delegations portion. And we'll be calling each of the delegates, the delegations forward, who have pre-registered to speak. And I will ask those members that have pre-registered to stick to that 10-minute guideline. And hopefully that will include one question if you want as part of your presentation time. Then, following the delegations, we'll open the floor and the social media to questions from those that are here and those that are watching online. And at that point, delegates or delegations can also ask additional questions at that time. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first delegation. It is by Elizabeth Zimmerman, who is the Executive Director of the YWCA Niagara Region. Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate your patience. No, you came a little early, so thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Guess I'm sitting here. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, to the chair and regional chair and members of the regional staff. I come this evening not only as a member of this community, but also as the executive director of the YWCA Niagara Region. We are an organization that provides emergency hostel services for homeless women and their families, as well as several transitional housing programs and other support services. Our work is with some of the most vulnerable and marginalized people in our community. As we are all aware, the Niagara region has been one of the top regions in the country for unemployment. The numbers of individuals who have found it necessary to access income supports through social assistance has risen exponentially over the last several years since the recession. The organizations that provide support to families and individuals living in poverty have seen the level of usage also rise exponentially in the same time period. We have many neighborhoods that are poor and at risk throughout the region and have been identified in the region's own mapping tool. In some respects, the needs have never been greater, and in contrast, the resources seem to continue to shrink. In this past year, our organization alone has lost funding for a program that provided supported transitional housing for homeless teen girls. The young women who accessed this program tended to be some of the highest need and most marginalized of our community, often facing many barriers to move successfully into adulthood. This funding was provided through the homelessness prevention strategy dollars that are funneled through the region. We were not alone. There were several other programs cut at the same time. As well, we received a 15% funding reduction in another program which provides transitional housing supports throughout the region for women and their children through this same funding source. In times of financial constraint, it often seems that the areas that become the first targets of cuts are the social services programs, when often it is the time that they are the most utilized and the most needed. There also tends to be a lack of recognition of the long-term impacts and the other costs that are incurred with the reduction in services. For example, the impacts on our healthcare system and justice system, as well as the overall long-term impact that comes from not providing adequate supports to individuals at critical times in their life. There has been much research that supports the long-term impacts of poverty on the social determinants of health, and that it can give a lifelong effect on any individual's overall health and quality of life. I state all of this to paint a picture of the realities of poverty in our community. As I reviewed the budget, I understand there are local legislated investments in terms of social assistance and homelessness services. And if I have calculated this correctly, and Brian, I'm sure that you will correct me if I'm wrong, the cost to the taxpayer in terms of the overall budget for social assistance is 7.5%, and for emergency hostel services and supports, it's only 0.15%, of which both, in my understanding, are actually legislated costs. Given the understanding that there is a community and moral responsibility to support our most vulnerable citizens, and given that there is a legislated responsibility to provide certain services within the community, my question is, what portion of the budget is actually local investment for the purposes of ensuring that there are adequate supports in the community for those living with the realities of poverty? And has the Regional Council considered a poverty reduction strategy as a key part of the services that are provided in the community, and are considering in developing and implementing the budget? And if there is not, would the council consider implementing a strategy and having a long-term commitment?
Thank you very much, Ms. Zimmerman, for your presentation. And I'm going to turn to the Commissioner of Community Services to provide some input on the question that you asked. So thank you very much, Commissioner Chislett.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a very thoughtful presentation and highlighting some of the very important issues that we are experiencing. Just a few points to add to that. Recently, Council has been looking at the matter of the homelessness funding. As many people will be aware, we received some $8 million of requests with only $2.4 million of funding available. That represented, in fact, a 20% cut in the funds that were available to us with the last call, and it meant that important programs like your program could not be funded again, and it meant that the ones that we could fund had to be reduced 15% despite the demand. So it is a serious concern. It was discussed quite a bit at Council, and there was a lot of attention given to this matter. To give it some context, if we were funded at the same level as Hamilton, just looking at population, not looking at need, just population, we would be getting about 5 times as much. So there certainly is a lack. In terms of regional investments, you've already pointed out that we do have the investments on the cost-shared portion for the hostels, for social assistance. There is a further investment of $1.5 million a year for the prosperity initiatives, and that is included in the budget. There is an investment, a top-up by the region, of in the range of about $250,000 a year for the Emergency Energy Fund. And I think we all know if we can prevent people from losing their homes, that's probably one of the best ways to address homelessness. So thank you, and those are my comments.
Thank you very much for the answer, and thanks so much for the presentation.
Thank you, and thank you for the answer as well.
I would ask that you do have a written presentation. Perhaps
Yes.
you can either leave it with
Sure.
with one of our staff or
Sure.
email it to us, and I think
Sure.
Council will want to see that as we get a summary of this evening at our
Absolutely.
Budget Review Committee. So I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you for
Thank you very much.
consideration.
Appreciate your presentation. We do have another delegation that has been registered, and that is David Bose, who is a resident in the city of St. Catharines. Mr. Bose, thank you for joining us this evening here in person, and hope it's you, but as opposed to online, which we know there are people watching online as well, but thank you for making a little bit of a drive here to join us this evening.
Not a problem.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, Chairman Gary Burrows, regional staff, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you this evening about the budget. I must admit that you made a statement about being specific on the budget. I'm not an accountant, and my remarks are in general remarks, okay? When I first read the notice of this meeting, I think it was last Saturday or Friday in the Standard, the pessimistic side of me said, do they really want to listen? Do they really want to hear? Better yet, will they listen? Then the optimistic side of me said, be ever hopeful, and I've got to go. So here I am. We all know what's going on in the economic situations across the world. We have it close to home. I'm sure some of you or most of you have been watching the goings-on in Toronto, Occupy Bay Street, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, while watching some of these proceedings, I saw an elderly lady walking with a sign that said, I'm 85 and I'm mad as hell. So it's not just the young people that are being concerned, but even more importantly, I think the seniors are more concerned than the young people. I'm only 75 and I'm mad as hell. Well, not really, but I am concerned. I know that around this table, all of you, I'm sure, are working very hard on the budget and to keep it in line and so forth, and to keep the increase in taxes as low as possible. However, I wonder whether you ever take into consideration what people call the doubling factor, sometimes known as compound And, you know, when we read that the budget increase is going to be 1.9% or 2% or whatever, we have to, if you are taking into consideration, or if you're not, you should. But what happens is with the doubling factor is that that 2% doesn't take long, not too many years, to get up to 20% and higher. So this is what we're faced with. I know there are a lot of things that you can't really help, but it has to start the economic sustainability, if you will, of the region and of ourselves. It has to start here at home with the region. The question a couple of questions I have, but I just can't understand. You know, like I said, I'm 75, lived in this community all my life pretty much, except for a year or two several years when I lived in Niagara and Gary kicked me out. Not really. Not really. I also lived in Niagara Falls for 1 year, so, but basically I'm, lived in the region all my life. And what I can't understand is that we don't have a lot of development taking place, but there's the Port Tower going up. A few years ago there was the big box stores on 4th Avenue. There's a big Sobeys opened up on Glendale Avenue. And all these buildings going up, there's not that many, but they're all new tax revenue. And I can't understand, I really can't understand why our taxes never go down when these new places go up. If you were running it like a business, which you aren't, I don't think, but you should be, when a business increases its revenue and increases its profits, the shareholders are given some of that back in the form of dividends. Well, you can't give dividends, but what you can do is give it back in taxes or reduce our taxes. I also understand that like I say, I didn't know much about the figures, but I've done some investigating. The region has something like $500 million in cash and 270 to 300 million in debts. Now, again, if you're in business, you would want to get rid of those debts because the interest that you pay on debt is always higher than what you get on your investments. And even if you could reduce that debt or our taxes by $200 million, that at 5% or 2% interest, that amounts to I think it's $400 million a year in interest charges savings. I also understand that somewhere between $6 and $7 million in profits, if you will, are coming to you from the Blue Box program. And my wife and I are very staunch contributors to this program, so we're shareholders in this program. And if there's a profit there, it should come back to the shareholders or the taxpayers. Now again, you can't do it in the form of a dividend, but you should, I understand or think that this money is going to be earmarked for general funds or into your slush fund or whatever. But it should be part of reducing our taxes. The one request I'm going to make is that, I know this is a really difficult thing, but we have to consider somehow or other to find a way so we can freeze property taxes on seniors' homes, okay? We have to find new sources or more sources of revenue. I know that Mr. Hutchings pointed out, or Gary Burrows' chair pointed out, how much we get from the Ontario government and other sources. But somehow or other we have to twist their arms even harder. And there must be a way, I think, that we could accomplish this. And then the taxes, of course, when the house is sold, would be reassessed or whatever, or continue to go up. So that's the basis of my presentation. Again, thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them. But I'm looking for more answers than I'm giving.
See that. Thank you very much for your presentation and for asking those questions. Pleased to say that we are here to listen, and that's why we're here this evening. That's why some regional councillors are here, and that's why our staff are here as well to listen. So rest assured of that, and I do appreciate you, because you were talking at the beginning saying you weren't sure whether to be here or not. Will they listen? We are listening. There was a series of questions you asked about, first was about growth and the amount of growth that was there. The second was in terms of debt and debt to cash.
Right.
Are we doing something with that?
Right.
Rates, as well as what I would call it in terms of a dividend for waste management. And then you also talked about tax freeze on seniors' homes. So I think those are the major things that you spoke about, and I'm hopeful that we can have a member of our staff respond to some of those, and I'm turning to our treasurer of the region, Mr. Hutchings, to help us out. Mr. Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll answer the first two questions regarding the growth and the monies in cash, and then in as well as in debts. And then if I can turn over to my colleague to talk about the waste management. And the fourth question was, Mr. Chair, was surrounding tax seasons. Maybe okay. I'll handle the first two at first, Mr. Bose. I know we've seen development you mentioned on 4th Avenue and other places. We actually, in the Niagara region, we don't see the development we've seen, our peer municipalities have seen, such as the Durhams, the Peels region, which includes Mississauga and what have you. Our average growth has ranged from 2006 to 1.6% to a low in 2010 of 0.9% growth. So all across the Niagara region with the hotels and with the Sobeys and the box stores, we've only seen a 0.9% increase, which has been less than inflation. We see the other communities with, they range from anywhere from 1%, and we've seen negative. Windsor has negative growth, but most of the other ones, the communities are seeing ranges of up to 2 to 6%. So with the cost of our inflation, gas prices, what have you, to run our organizations and all that, we try to stay with an affordability factor, which you've seen, a 0.25% over the last 5 years, which I had a slide up there showing that. So we've tried to stay below that inflation factor with a growth rate that you can see some comparative with a growth rate which is far less than the inflation factor. We've tried to stay within that and trying to figure in that affordability strategy. That's number one. Hopefully that explains, that answers your question. Maybe I can pause and yeah, okay, keep going. The second one was, it's a great question, actually. It's one that internally staff, my finance staff and myself wrestle with daily. Our cash is king around the region, not only just for cash flow is big because of the investment strategy we have. You saw $11 million we're projecting out in investments, but we have $300 million in debts. Why we have $500 million in debts, $500 million in cash at the moment is a bit of an anomaly. We went to market early on a debt issuance last year because we felt the interest rates were extremely low. And that was a $72 million issuance. And we have a number of capital projects that are in the pipeline at the moment that will be finished. Approximately about $132 million we're expecting to be finished. That when you take off the $72 million off the 500, it leaves us with approximately $300 million in cash. And again, it could net out against our debt, which you've pointed out, Mr. Bose, very well. The problem that we have is we have a number of reserve accounts which we have to have aside. It's like owning a business. Right. It's like your owner's equity. It's your reserves. You have to have those there against future liabilities. We have reserve liabilities almost $220 million. So right now, at this moment, you are correct. We're in a bit of an anomalous situation. We're about $300 million in the bank we shouldn't have, but that money will be accounted over the next year. We have an investment committee that's looking at this. We actually, we won't have those monies because of the capital monies we're paying off in debt in the capital projects. With the $220 million left that we have in reserves, our investment committee and our investment committee chairs here, Councillor DeAngela, has been looking at internal self-financing. So why have it, just as you said, why have it sitting in the bank making less interest when it is on debt? We're actually looking at starting to back to borrowing from ourselves at a much lower interest rate, and we've just started that. We have one project that just went through. It's a financing of our commitment to our local hospital, which will, by internal self-financing, to your suggestion, Mr. Bose, we'll save approximately $200,000 per year by internal self-financing, paying ourselves and then borrowing back from ourselves. So we are looking at that quite seriously. I know my investment committee chair it's a big initiative for him as well. So to answer that question, you are right, but we are in the process now of paying off many capital projects, which will bring us back in line where we should be and looking at internal investment strategy.
So that's the first 2 points, and I just want to add to that, the investment committee is a new initiative. It's been talked about by regional councillors, that it's something that we do need to look at, and so that's why we established that committee, and council colleagues have been discussing it around the table. Commissioner Brothers, regarding rates and dividends and on our waste management, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and excellent question, Mr. Bose. We've had a banner year in waste management. You may not be aware, and I believe Commissioner Hustings mentioned this, we enterprise and actually recycle a lot of material, not only for Niagara region, but we bid a competitive contract with the Waterloo region. In fact, we recycle and process twice the amount of material than what Niagara region generates. And when markets are up as they are now, and we're enjoying a bit of a bump in the market right now, our recycling revenue that we get in from this processing has exceeded our revenue projections for 2011. So we're having an excellent year. Not only are we making extra money on our own material that we recycle in Niagara region, but we're also making additional profits from the enterprise bid that we submitted for Waterloo region and Haldimand County as well. So we process a lot more material at our Niagara recycling facility, and we've been able to make some additional profit from that, which in fact we have applied to the bottom line in reducing the increases that we anticipate for our operating budgets for waste management. 2 years ago, Mr. Chairman, 2 years ago, I think we lost in the order of $2 million when the economy recession hit. And correspondingly, the less amount of money that was available for plastics and metal, we actually had to dip in reserves because we lost or we didn't achieve $2 million. With the economy and as gas pricing goes up, there's a higher demand for some of the plastic products that we have. Some of the cardboard material, there's been some great uptick in terms of the demand for those particular products. Paper products are way down, so we've lost on paper because there's been a very significant downturn in the amount of recycled paper that's being used in the industry. An uptake in terms of cardboard, very good on aluminum and plastics as well. So this past year we've enjoyed and we're projecting an additional $4.9 million surplus over what we had projected. We intend on setting that money aside, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Bose, to pay for our capital programs in the future. In fact, what we're doing is making investments in our reserves so we won't have to increase the amount of waste management fees in the future. This coming year, we anticipate additional sustaining those extra revenues, and in fact, we're only looking at a 0.2% increase in the overall waste management budget for Niagara region, $77,000 on a $34 million enterprise. So in fact, what we have been doing is delivering a very low, modest, below CPI increase for waste management, recognizing the extra revenues that were coming in, and that's how we've been able to do that. Give you a very low increase in our waste management as a result of enterprising and managing a lot of our costs across the enterprise. Our budget guidance, Mr. Chairman, was $1 million, and we came in at $77,000. So to your point, Mr. Bose, we are keeping the rates down. We do have increases in our fuel costs for the collection contracts that we put out. That's a curbside service that we've deployed this past year. We have increases in our waste disposal at Walker Industries, where we take a significant amount of the residual waste that we have. It needs to be landfilled. Those are CPI increases that we have. So we've been able to offset a lot of that with the amount of revenue that we brought in, and we are trying to keep the rates as low as possible.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that complete answer. And now a quick answer from our CAO regarding your last point about tax freeze on seniors' homes, property tax freeze.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in regard to taxes for seniors, and you've heard some of the responses for, it isn't, I got it. Some of the responses that are success stories in terms of trying to keep the tax rate low. You mentioned freezing taxes. I think that's our, we'd love to be able to do that, but we also have expenditures that go the other way. For example, we're responsible, and maybe inappropriately so, for social program costs. It's, they're being uploaded from the property tax bill, but we've had caseload increases of 14, 15, 20% a year. So those offset some of the success stories we have in other areas. In regard to seniors' taxes and a freeze on seniors' taxes, there are a number of programs that exist now through the federal government, through the income tax system. Some of our local municipalities, for example, St. Catharines, have a tax deferral program or a tax credit program. That's not something, acknowledge that's not something that exists presently in Niagara, but if there's a strong interest in that, you may be interested in either attending or following the activities of our Property Assessment and Tax Policy Committee, because that's where tax policy decisions are made. It's very hard within our tax structure to cater to an individual class like seniors, because it's a property tax system. So it means having to layer on another type of mechanism that focuses on those individuals from a personal basis rather than from their property tax basis.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Trojan. Thank you very much, Mr. Bose, for your presentation. Greatly appreciated. You have some answers to the questions, and staff will be here at the end if there's some things that you want to discuss further. So thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Bose.
Thank you.
And again, if you have, I see you have paper there. If it's written out enough,
It's just handwritten.
just handwritten notes. Well, we
Nobody can
appreciate
read
that. Okay, kind of like my writing. Thank you very much for your presentation. And thanks to staff for those answers. We're going to be moving next to questions here from the audience, and I know that staff have to get ready with a microphone that they're going to go around and play Phil Donahue here. But we do have a question that came in early, and I'm going to ask Dr. Yeager to answer this one. It is, and she is the medical officer of health, but also involved with EMS. And this question is, what impact has rising fuel costs had on the ambulance service? Can you help us out, Doctor?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Actually, interestingly, this year we were able to replace a certain number of our ambulance vehicles. Over the past couple of years, we've been following the cost of fuel, and that we are actually experiencing a decrease in fuel costs if you compare our costs this year compared to a couple of years ago. We also likewise have decrease in our operating costs for our ambulance, which is why our EMS budget was able to come in at essentially 0% this year.
Thank you very much for the answer. Appreciate that. Now we have Sean, who's available here with the microphone. If there's anyone in the audience that has a question that they'd like to ask our staff and members of our agencies, boards, and commissions. Nobody's jumping up, so let's move. Oh, here we are. Gentleman in the back, Sean. And I'd appreciate if you could say your name and perhaps where you live in the region.
Sure. It's Randy Mulder, ex-Pelham resident, now a Lincoln resident again.
We want you back in Pelham.
I loved my time on Foss Road, let me tell you. My question is, I hear a lot concerning aging infrastructure in terms of roads and sewers and stuff, whether it be in the news or on Maclean's or driving down the Gardiner Expressway in Toronto. And I'm just curious what the status is of the infrastructure in Niagara in regards to roads and sewers. And are we prepared, should there be unexpected surprise in this area in terms of reserve funds and things like that?
Thank you very much, Randy, for that question. To answer that, I'm going to turn to the Commissioner of Public Works that oversees that, and that's Mr. Brothers. Mr. Brothers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I love fielding questions on infrastructure condition, which is our bread and butter work. So it wasn't part of this evening's presentation, but we have effectively a two-level service delivery across Niagara region for water, wastewater, and roads. In Niagara region, we do provide the trunk services for water and wastewater. That's the treatment plants and, if you will, the large transmission mains, reservoirs, and pumping stations, and so on. And the regional road network are the larger roads throughout Niagara region. So we don't look after the local road network. And that's a pretty clear distinction that I want to draw here, as well as we maintain all of the major bridges and culverts that my colleague Commissioner Hutchings mentioned earlier in his presentation. So with that, if I could just break it down in a couple of respects, I think in terms of the water and wastewater, you know, we do have some reserves, and we are making significant investments every year, more so in the wastewater portfolio, where we need to spend a lot of money over the next 10 years. Something in the order of $400 to $500 million needs to be invested for wastewater facilities, pumping stations, trunk sewers, to really capture all of the wastewater as well as the stormwater, unfortunately, that's getting into our systems. From a transportation perspective, our road conditions have been deteriorating across Niagara region over the last number of years. In fact, I don't think we've discussed this with Council, Mr. Chairman, that we need to further invest in more paving of our roads, reconstructing of the roads once they pass a certain point of condition. It's no point in fact, repaving it, you have to rebuild it. So we have a backlog of $70, $80 million of major capital works that needs to be undertaken. And to pay for this is what Commissioner Hutchings had mentioned earlier, that we're looking for a 1% levy, 1% infrastructure fee to be put on the levy to pay and close the gap so we can increase the investments in our capital infrastructure. The point of this is to bring the roads back to a sustainable investment level so that we don't have continued deterioration of our bridges and road networks across Niagara region. It's about to improve it and stabilize the existing condition. And this will take a significant amount of investment over a period of time. And we believe that it's a very balanced way of, through budget cuts and moving off certain capital programs to match our budget, we do need to increase the amount of capital expenditures. And this, we feel, is a balanced approach of having a very modest increase in your levy and your taxes to pay for significant increases, to pay for $100 million of extra capital works that we think we need to invest in our road infrastructure, bridges, and culvert systems throughout Niagara region.
Thank you very much for the question and the answer, Commissioner. Appreciate that. We now have a kind of a local question that's before us here. Why does the region have only 39 long-term care beds for all of West Niagara? Will the region be investing to secure more much-needed long-term care beds in this part of Niagara? For that answer, I'm going to turn to our Commissioner of Community Services, Commissioner Chislett. So if you could provide us an answer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The investment in long-term care homes in Niagara region is largely historical. Long-term care homes were taken over by the region and their operations, and we have 8 that are spread out. Over that time, we've been looking at investments and how we spread out the beds to reflect the need. West of St. Catharines, we have Deer Park Villa. That's actually one of the more recent acquisitions in the region, and that was a property that was taken over from the hospital. In terms of investments, Council will be considering a report tomorrow night looking at investments in Deer Park Villa. Part of that would include a potential expansion of 20 beds. In other words, a redevelopment that would allow for a future expansion of 20 beds, should we get the beds and the funding for that from the province.
Thank you very much for that answer, and we look forward to that report coming forward to Regional Council. We wonder if there's other members of the public here present that have a question for us. There's a gentleman in the back. Denise will assist.
Now we have it on. Oh, here we okay. So I was just speaking to myself for the last 2 minutes. Let me introduce myself again, and Mr. Chair and Regional Chair and staff. I appreciate you allowing us this opportunity to speak this evening. And let me say, I do believe you do listen. And I trust that what you're doing here is of good interest for all of us. But I came here tonight to listen and to hear about the budget, but also being the president of the Grimsby and District Chamber of Commerce, I thought I'd take a few minutes to make a few comments because of my role as the president of the chamber and having a voice for businesses in our community here in Grimsby and also outward into the region because of the circumstances that this region is in when it comes to employment or the issue of a high unemployment rate. And as I look around and I see some of the commercial buildings, not specifically in Grimsby, but in other communities that are sitting empty, I begin to question what might be the issue that is causing a lot of, say vacancies in commercial buildings. And one thing I've noticed in some of my personal investigations is that property taxes seem to be a little on the high side, so that it deters investment in say a downtown retail store because of the taxes being as high as they are. Specifically, I was looking at a building not too long ago here in Lincoln, in Beamsville, and the value of the property was about $215,000. It's for sale. It has been for about 9 months. But the property taxes are $6,000 a year. So as an investment, right up front, there's a $500 a month overhead before you even open the door and try and earn some income through whatever business you want to operate. So I see in some of our communities that issue where we see a lot of vacant buildings where maybe it was a business at one time and now it's just sitting empty. It is a lot riskier for commercial business than it is for, say, somebody buying a residential property. Investment costs more. The average loan is 5 to 6%, where on residential it's 2 to 5%, depending on how long you take out your mortgage. So there's a higher risk, and if we want to encourage more investment in this region, I'm concerned that maybe property taxes for commercial buildings might be becoming a little out of reach. We've got to realize, too, that in a small community such as Grimsby, we're not going to have the high density of traffic that we would in a large big box store or a large mall. The foot traffic's going to be a lot less, so those retailers are not going to be able to drive as much revenue into those businesses. So that's an issue. And so I just wanted to speak out for some of the businesses in our communities and say, and looking at it too, I think I'm going to do a little more homework as we go along, because I want to see Grimsby and all the communities in this region become more vibrant. We need businesses in here so we have more employment, so we have less strain on our social services, because I can hear tonight we do have a lot of programs for social services that we need to get people working, more people working. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunstan. Appreciate
Dunstall, sorry.
I'm sorry,
That's
Dunstall.
okay.
I apologize. Thank you for your presentation and for bringing that to us on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. I know that Commissioner Hutchings wants to talk a little bit about how property taxes are divvied up in the region, but I do want to also say that we established another group, another committee with our colleagues around from local municipalities, the towns and cities and townships across the region. And that's something called the Property Assessment Taxation Review Committee. Not a very interesting title, but what it is looking at some of the exact questions or issues that you've identified. We did write to the Chambers of Commerce across the region seeking feedback, and I would certainly encourage you as a chamber to perhaps respond to that. We haven't received it yet, but maybe that's in the mail. So we would hope that you could respond to that and the questions that we've asked to assist regional councillors, but also our colleagues around from the area municipalities as we look at those rates and ratios and how commercial tax rates and ratios compare to residential, compare to industrial. So I'd certainly encourage you to provide some feedback on that. I think it's populated right now, and if that's the term, it certainly has members around it. But I would ask the Commissioner to certainly provide some additional information, Commissioner Hutchings.
Thank you. And to Mr. Dunstall's question, we did receive 5 responses. The Property Assessment Tax Review Committee did receive 5 responses, 2 from 2 local chambers, Niagara Falls and St. Catharines, and 1 from the Niagara North Federation of Agriculture, and another one from an Economic Development Office as well, 2 Economic Development Offices, actually. Actually, your example of a $215,000 property is very timely, John. It's where we're using a $220,000 property in our example, and we said that pays approximately $3,100 in taxes, and that's residential taxes. What we have is called tax ratios. Industrial is in the Niagara region is 2.63, and in 2005 it was 4.17. It's been brought down since 2005, the ratio. So if you had industrial property valued at the same amount, the 219, I think this is all rough numbers, but if you had industrial property at $219,000 back in 2005, you would have paid approximately $12,000 for that industrial property. Now it's down to about $7,000 or $8,000. So and plus the province has now started a reduction in the business education taxes. And I know the regional chair and myself went to Toronto and during Niagara Week and tried to expedite Niagara's business and education tax to be quicker because of our unemployment rates and our situation in the local economy here in the Niagara region. Your example, though, is I know it's a commercial property. I think you maybe know the property you're speaking to, but that commercial property is 1.78 times what a residential rate. So you're in the ballpark at almost 2 times the residential rate. So it's about $6,000. We have had some suggestions by the PATR committee, and you're more than welcome to come and be involved with it. Probably as the president of the chamber, we invited chambers to come at the last meeting. But the issue is, Mr. Dunstall, is that if we change, it's one pot of money, and this is what we're actually the next meeting we're coming back. We are asked to come back with some examples. It's one pot of money, and how you disperse that money. So if we and it goes in with an economic development strategy, how that all fits. So if the economic development strategy is to bring more industry or more commercial or more residential, that's the goal. We can do a whole bunch of plans underneath that goal financially. We can change ratios. But when you change the ratio, one ratio, it'll affect the dollars on another side. We gave an example of a commercial ratio being changed in Niagara Falls, greatly influenced the residential taxes in that same area by a large amount. So we've asked to come back with those scenarios. So we believe that if the economic development strategy is clearly outlined, we can definitely provide some tax incentives to drive some of those businesses here, plus community improvement plans that Mr. Robson could probably speak to, and development charges, and I know he'd be very interested in speaking to as well. But those are some of the initiatives we're trying to take upon ourselves, Mr. Dunstall, and I'd be more than welcome your input into some of those if you so wish.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think we should hear from the Commissioner Robson on those initiatives, if you don't mind, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Dunstall, thank you. Actually, the idea of rejuvenating and revitalizing our existing urban areas is music to my ears. And in fact, our council has invested. We do use financial incentives to help offset the capital side of reestablishing new uses and hopefully more productive and more vibrant uses. And that's in virtually every municipality. We've supported that. It's been going on now for getting close to 10 years. And what's interesting is, of course, these things take a little bit of time to return that investment. What we did in our, more recently, we had a scan, and by using the incentives or the incentives program that we have throughout Niagara, for $7.9 million that has effectively gone to assist the development. It's attracted 10 times that amount in investment. So, you know, when it comes to using tools, as Commissioner Hutchings was talking about, I believe we're actually utilizing them. And in an economy that's in transition, you have to be creative that way. And I give full marks to our council for sticking with that. And in fact, that was one of the new programs that Commissioner Hutchings was talking about, actually increase the amount of investment to generate that amount of activity. Because quite frankly, those who are, whether they're involved in commercial enterprise or simply from a development standpoint, they literally build our community. And I think, you know, there's benefits associated with that, and we have to recognize that with the levers that we have through our various tax policy tools and others.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Robson and Hutchings. Thank you very much, Mr. Dunstall, for your presentation. And again, we'd be pleased to receive that if you want to put that in writing, and we can forward it to our Property Assessment Taxation Review Committee as well. So thank you. One of the other options for members here and elsewhere is if they write out a question, if they're not prepared to jump right to the microphone as Mr. Dunstall was, but are a little shy, and we do have one of those questions. I'm going to ask Commissioner Hutchings to read the question and then answer it. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question comes from a person in the audience. Brian, can you clarify the assessment growth numbers, new assessment versus impact increases as relates to setting guidance? I just want to clarify. Yes, I went over that pretty quickly in my presentation. Basically, when impact, which is Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, the people who give your sheet that tells you what your house is worth, if they went in January 2012 is the key date for most, that's when they set your assessment of your homes. Those assessments will come out in 2013, but that's when you'll receive letters sometime in 2012 assessing the value of your homes. If those numbers go up on average across the Niagara region, so let's say for easy math, if a house is worth, or a unit's worth $100,000, and everybody across the Niagara region goes up on average 5%, so that becomes $105,000 to receive your notice of assessment. If everybody on average goes up 5% across the Niagara region, that's kind of a watermark. The watermark, the boats all go up to the same level. If your house goes up any more than the average, you'll probably pay more property taxes than the average person. But if it all goes up 5%, then you won't pay any more in your share of property taxes. But when I say assessment growth on taxes, what I'm referring to is what Mr. Bowes referred to is the new development, not the average rate. Everybody homes are going up, but the new, you referred to the Sobeys or the box stores. It's the new growth. So a building is built and it's going to pay, instead of that empty land sitting there paying $10,000 in taxes, now paying $60,000 in taxes. That growth is on the $50,000 in growth. So just to clarify that, it's not, you receive a notice and impact, your property values went up. If they didn't go up any more than average across the Niagara region, you're not paying any more in taxes. If they went below average, you're paying less in taxes. When I talk about assessment growth, it's assessment growth on new properties, on new growth.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. It is a topic of interest this evening because I was just handed another card with the same type of question, and I hope that I think you've answered that question as well, talking about the inherent increases. So I know it's a question that I've had from a number of residents in Parliament across the region about that. So thank you for helping to clarify that. I have another question here. This is somebody that's seen that the dental bus is coming, and this is a question for our Medical Officer of Health and Commissioner of Public Health. How much does the new dental bus cost? How much does the new dental bus cost? Doctor?
The new dental bus costs the residents of Niagara in terms of the levied Niagara tax dollars. It does not cost anything. The new dental bus is fully funded from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care through their Healthy Smiles Ontario program. The bus is, it gets rather offended when it's called a bus. It's actually a very large Winnebago, but we always call it the bus. It is the mobile dental clinic. Its launch is tomorrow, so anybody is welcome to come at the region at 5:30. It cost $200,000 to purchase an outfit. It was decorated in Niagara, and it's very attractive. If you're looking in your rear view mirror at the mobile clinic, it actually says backwards, "Did you floss today?" So don't get in an accident while you're trying to figure out what those little words say. It says, "Did you floss today?" So please do. And we also received from the provincial government operating expenses for our mobile clinic on the order of $200,000.
Thank you for that.
And the 40 or 50 or 60 different interpretations of what governance means. And also, we have set up already what's called a responsive region committee, which is a committee of staff that are going to work through our audit committee to look at specific sections that have been identified where there may be savings, where the process of government may be done in a different and better way. So we've started the cost of government review already. And that committee is now being formed, and terms of reference, etc., have been done for that committee, but also the general discussion of governance will start either the end of this year or the beginning of next year, and probably will take at least a year.
Thank you for the answer, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. There is the slide here that's up, talks about the specific costs of governance, and that's regional councillors and the regional chair and the chief administrative officer of Niagara. So those are some of the costs, and that's in your slide deck as well. So that's so thank you for that question. I'm trying to think of. I thought we had another question here from. That's right. There was a question about. Thank you. It's a question about development and development charges, and Commissioner Robson wanted to give a little bit more information to kind of flesh out that question. So, Commissioner Robson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I did appreciate, actually, it was Mr. Bose who raised this, and this is development charges. His question was, well, as we get this new development in, why isn't it offsetting the cost? For a number of reasons. There's a direction that, in fact, we're working on in our development charge policy. Currently, new development doesn't actually pay for itself. And what's more is development isn't sort of a general capture that all development pays the same rate or returns the same type of benefit to the community. So, and generally, higher density development has a greater likelihood of paying for itself than lower density development. But right now, we do discount new development, and I can give you something empirical. We have evidence. So, for example, low-density residential development, for every dollar you raise from assessment, it costs you between $1.30 and $1.42 per year to serve it. So we have to take a look at that and say, what does that mean? So when you're looking for the offset, if we're discounting it, the discount is actually captured by the property tax base. That we still need to raise those revenues. So right now, and actually through leadership of Councillor Augustine, we're working on our development charge policy to get to more full cost recovery of new development. And in doing so, that relieves the burden on the existing property tax. Now again, there are policy reasons for why you may want to incentivize new development, and that comes into the discussion of development charge policy. But it is something that that we are currently working on, and we actually anticipate landing that early in the new year. So I really do appreciate the question. It's one of those things that I think is perhaps needs to be better understood by the public. So anytime we have the opportunity to talk about how do we balance the benefits of new development with taxpayer interest, I believe is something that we have a responsibility to do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for that expansion of some of the questions we've had. Here's another interesting question. Niagara seems to be falling behind other regions when it comes to attracting investment and creating jobs. What can the region do to put an end to the squabbling among municipalities on this issue and get people working together with a common united voice to attract new business and industry to Niagara, which we badly need. I'm going to turn to our CAO, Chief Administrative Officer of Niagara, Mr. Trojan, to answer that question for us. Mr. Trojan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the answer to that question lies in a report that will be dealt with by Council actually tomorrow. It may not reach its ultimate conclusion tomorrow, but we believe it's a very effective start in responding to the issue contained in the question. There's been a fair bit of work done over the last year to develop a revamped economic development model for Niagara. We have 12 area municipalities, we have the region, we have local chambers of commerce, we have our educational institutions, all who can contribute and are contributing to economic growth in Niagara. And this new model contemplates a more networked community level response to economic development where all of those players would be more coordinated in their response to economic development. There's been some good discussion, some good consultation taking place over the last couple of weeks, and Commissioner Robson may want to speak further to that. But discussions with all of our 12 area municipalities, some of which have economic development offices and some don't, to talk about how we can bring this new model to life. There's strong interest from chambers of commerce in being part of that, and it contemplates a broader suite of services than presently exist for new businesses and existing businesses in Niagara. So I would stay tuned to see what happens at Council on Thursday, and we're hoping to have the new model in place in the new year, so come January 2012.
Thank you very much for that answer, Mr. Trojan, and certainly we look forward to that debate tomorrow evening at Regional Council about that economic development strategy, and that's something that we have been working on. I know that the regional chair led the charge and established a small subcommittee of regional councillors with staff, and they've been working diligently on this since the spring. And my comment here, you hear a lot about committees. We certainly work that way through the region. We end up having a lot of committee meetings to make sure that we can move forward with the work of the region. I wonder if there's, if Sean can help, if there's anybody that has a question, a live question here from the audience. Okay, if we don't, I have another question here. And this is again from sort of the western part of Niagara, I'm told. Lots of us here live on farms. We don't need the organics program, and I don't need large branch pickup. Do I pay for these on my garbage bill? If yes, what for? I don't need the service, so can I opt out? And I think this might be alluding to the fact that some of the township of West Lincoln and Waynfleet have that new service. So perhaps we could turn to the Commissioner of Public Works, Mr. Brothers, to answer that question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I think, for that question. So can you opt out? Unfortunately, the answer is no. We did is we brought forward essentially a core service plan for waste management. We changed the levels of service and service delivery throughout Niagara region. So we went to tender for curbside collection services and provide services throughout Niagara region to give the best possible value for taxpayers. Out in the rural area, clearly because of the density of homes, it costs more to pick up solid waste on a per connection basis because you have to travel that much further. And this is clearly balanced off with higher density communities that are there. So there is a blending effect right across Niagara region that we're all in this together, and that in fact we apportion the cost throughout Niagara region, that we're all paying effectively the same rate for the same level of service. Regarding organics program, Waynfleet and I believe the community of West Lincoln just came on board with the organics program this past year. And it was interesting, Mr. Chairman, some of the statistics, some of the rural community residents feel that, well, we live in the rural community, so we naturally recycle our organics and our trees and our material. But unfortunately, some of the statistics that we've had a look at in terms of doing waste audits don't quite bear that out. And in fact, some of the communities in the rural area have very similar organics that are actually put into the garbage stream as the urban area boundary to varying degrees. So in fact, the information supports the fact that the organics program is applicable in the rural community as it is in an urban community based on the waste audits that we've undertaken. So the need is there to improve diversion, not only in terms of the recycling blue box program and the gray box, but as well as the organics program. So it's one for all and all for one, Mr. Chairman. We're all in this thing together. There's no opt-out clause, and we would hope that all residents can see the merit in additional recycling in the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner, for that, the answer to that question. I was going to comment on the regional chair. I know he likes to opt in and take a lot of waste to the dump occasionally, and he's a fan of that. So we often hear about that on our Waste Management Strategy Steering Committee. There's that word again, committee, but I do want to point out Councillor Bilesma, who's here this evening, who's the chair of that Waste Management Strategy Steering Committee. And those are some of the points and issues that we deal with at that subcommittee level. We have another question here, and this is goes, I think, to Commissioner Robson. This is a question about being a cultural capital of Canada. This, what does it mean, and how will it benefit Lincoln? Is this the same work as the 1812 Legacy Council, or is it just duplication of funding? Commissioner Robson.
Well, I'll begin with emphatically denying that it's anything about duplication of funding, Mr. Chairman. And it actually builds a little bit on a previous question as well, is what are we doing for our economy and investment? The cultural capitals, I believe, is a fine example of recognizing that fundamentally we do have to capitalize on our existing asset base, and Niagara has a very rich cultural base, which in fact is big for tourism, is certainly a source of great civic pride, but at the same time, we've had it estimated that 9% of our employment, and this is an economy in transition, 9% of our employment is in the cultural sector. Now that may not sound like the biggest number, but I can assure you it would sound like a big number if I told you it was unemployment. And so having this designation allows us to celebrate, allows groups that are struggling for funds to really showcase themselves, and it is going across Niagara. In fact, there's activities in every community because the process to develop the application was very inclusive, had arts, culture, ethnocultural groups, etc., from around the peninsula identifying projects that they wanted to use. Now, back to the 1812 question. Of course, the backdrop for 2012 is we do have the bicentennial of the War of 1812. That's a theme in our application, but in fact, for the actual celebration of the bicentennial, only one of the projects is sponsored, is sponsoring that initiative, and that actually has to do with the opening ceremonies of that. But I think this is really fundamental. Whether it's our culture-based work that we're doing with the agricultural sector, these are assets in our community. So it is, well, it's a great opportunity to celebrate. It's also a great opportunity to reflect on what we have as our assets and how do we capitalize them. And I believe this allows us to do that with a great shot in the arm being recognized nationally.
Thank you very much for that answer, Commissioner, on the cultural capital of Canada. Another question that we have here is, I think this is really a two-pronged question. I'm looking over this way and this is, what is the Niagara region doing to address homelessness and the lack of affordable housing for many residents in Niagara? I'm going to first turn to our Commissioner of Community Services, Commissioner Chislett, and then I think we'll also go to Lorna Beckwith, who's the General Manager of Niagara Regional Housing. So, Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. I won't repeat because I think I discussed quite a bit of this in my response to Ms. Zimmerman. Certainly there is a strong commitment, and I know in my time on council I've heard that there have been a lot of concerns in this area, and tied also to employment. But I'll turn it over to the General Manager because she will have more current news.
In terms of Niagara Regional Housing and homelessness, we provide over 8,000 units of affordable housing, and we also maintain the waiting list for the region. One of our priority groups is the homeless, to the extent that every 1 in 10 vacancies goes to a homeless person. At the same time, we also have a number of programs that are more preventative in nature. We have a housing allowance program that allows people who are on the waiting list to get an allowance while they're waiting. And that effectively helps them deal with the private market rent that they're paying at the time. We have also partnered with the province for a similar program, so we're able to provide additional subsidies to people who are waiting. And we also have a rent bank program where if a person is currently paying rent and being under threat of eviction, we will provide up to 2 months' rent to stay the eviction and allow the person to remain in that unit. Having said that, going forward, and the lack of affordable housing, up until now we've been very dependent on federal and provincial funding to develop new housing. And under previous programs, we've introduced 530 new affordable housing units in Niagara. Going forward, my understanding from both levels of government is that there probably won't be that strong a commitment in terms of funding, but they are in the process of announcing a program that will allow us to get block funding over a 3-year period. We will be distributing that money over 5 programs that will, some of them addressing homelessness, others addressing the pure lack of affordable housing.
Thank you very much for your answers. Appreciate that and providing some clarity. Thank you. And I think this is going to be the final question of the evening. And this is, you've had a strategy focused on taxpayer affordability for the past few years, but now you're telling us that we can't sustain this strategy moving forward. Does this mean residents are going to see big tax increases in the foreseeable future? Commissioner Hutchings, can you assist us with that question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The plan moving forward is to try to keep, again, with our affordability strategy of looking at the consumer price index plus any growth sign. That affordability strategy will be in there, and council is always seriously considering that and making sure that we make sure our taxes are affordable for our Niagara citizens. Moving forward, some of the things that have been mentioned tonight, that some of these are 2012 fixes, such as intermunicipal transit, as well as which is a pilot program only for 3 years. And if that is approved, that would come off in 2 years, depending on the successful delivery of that pilot, as well as the police interim facilities is only for another 2 years. Some of the longer-term things we are suggesting in the sustainability, though, and as one of the members of the audience asked about, is, and it's quite a serious problem, is our infrastructure gap. And that is for 5 years. We're asking for 1% per year on the property tax base to fund that infrastructure gap, to bring it down into an affordability measure. Moving forward, the region, as I said, is taking the affordability strategy seriously. We do have costs that are going up. We've seen those costs every year. We've been able to dig into our budgets to look at them, to bring it within affordability strategy. The council has brought in a responsive region team to look at our programs to make sure they're affordable, look at programs we're offering and should we be offering, should we be delivering them, as well as are they affordable. So there's a number of initiatives moving forward on the next few years and to try to keep us within that affordability. So the question is, do we expect bigger increases? The answer, in my knowledge, is no, not any greater than we can in our affordability strategy. Most of the sustainability issues, I believe, will be withheld by the responsive region team looking at efficiencies, but also within that affordability strategy for the capital of 1% per year.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your answer to that question. And I want to say thank you to each member of the audience here that asked questions and those online. Certainly, it's been a good conversation from my perspective, and hopefully, and I see some councillors nodding in the audience as well from perspective of councillors about some of the issues that and questions that members of the public have through this process. I'm going to turn to our Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Trojan, to just provide some final comments before I before I actually close the meeting. So, Mr. Trojan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we want to thank everyone for their participation tonight, whether in person or online. We hope that the information that we shared has been informative to help folks understand what their services cost and how they're paid for. It's certainly been informative to us to receive the input and the questions that have been asked. And what we'll do now is we'll prepare a report that summarizes all of the input that we received tonight into a report for council's consideration when they deliberate the budget before they approve it. Just want to remind everyone about the remaining opportunities for further information or input on our budget. We have a number of dates. November the 3rd, and it was in the slide presentation. We have our capital and operating budget summaries, along with budget presentations by the police and our Economic Development Corporation. On November the 10th, another budget review committee meeting where we'll deal with the approval of all of our rate budgets for water and wastewater and waste management. And then on December the 1st, we'll have the full budget review. So that will be sort of the culmination of the budget discussions, hopefully with final approval, and that will be in the council chambers at regional headquarters. All of this budget information is available. If you go to our website, www.niagararegion.ca, you can access that information. You can also, if you wish, ask questions online, and we'll respond to those questions online as well. So finally, we want to thank our regional chair and members of council for the support they've given us to support this initiative of public engagement. I want to thank all of our senior staff and our partners with the agencies, boards, and commissions tonight for participating and responding to the questions, and to all of our staff who've helped make this possible, web streaming it and videotaping it. We hope that, and some feedback too is appropriate as well in terms of how this suits people's needs. We launched this last year. We want to continue refining it, making it better, making it more informative for the public. So any suggestions that you have in that regard would be greatly appreciated as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trojan. And if there is that burning question that you couldn't get to, and I guess I'm saying this to those online or watching on TV when that will be broadcast, we do have another opportunity. That's November 2nd at the Fort Erie Council Chambers. Opportunity to watch it both live stream on the web and also come and be there, and that's from 7 p.m. But there's one, Mr. Trojan, you certainly thanked many people, the staff, and those that have put this together, but there's one other category that I'd like to thank, and that is members of the media. We do have members of the media here who were keen on participating with us and web streaming it off their website, so I wanted to say thank you very much to you for that. And also, this will be displayed on Cogeco. We don't have those dates and times yet, so I want to say thank you. I shouldn't have said the name, but to Cable. I tried not to say the media's name, as we said, but I will say it. Jeff is here from the Standard, and he was keen on getting that web streamed as well. So thank you very much to members of the media. Most importantly, thank you, each and every member who is here this evening and those online. We appreciate you being here, asking the questions. We look forward to the feedback and certainly written submissions as well, and it will definitely form part of our deliberations as we move forward on the 2012 budget. I appreciate the Commissioner changing that slide. Thank you. That's the idea for the evening and the closing comments. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.